Turbulence. Controllers have handled that for decades. They reroute planes around weather systems before most passengers feel anything. What actually terrifies them is something else entirely. Not a storm, not mechanical failure, something quiet, ground level, and over in about 4 seconds. It's happened at airports you've flown through. It's called a runway incursion. The deadliest one in history killed 583 people before either plane ever left the ground. Most passengers picture the sky as the dangerous part. The numbers tell a different story. Runways are aviation's most critical 60 seconds. A runway incursion means any unauthorized presence on an active runway. Another aircraft, a vehicle, or sometimes just a person who took a wrong turn. And some of these incidents, the ones that nearly became disasters, were caught only because one controller looked at exactly the right screen at exactly the right second. The FAA logs roughly 1,000 runway incursions in the United States every year. Most are minor, some are not. In February 2023, a FedEx cargo jet came within seconds of a Southwest Airlines flight on the same runway in Austin, Texas. The FedEx plane was landing. Southwest was beginning its takeoff roll. Neither crew could see the other in the pre-dawn darkness. The FedEx crew spotted Southwest at 50 feet. They pulled up hard, a go-around, clearing the intersection by less than 3 seconds. Investigation found Southwest had entered the runway without full visual confirmation. A standard procedure slightly rushed. The chain nearly became catastrophic. That specific scenario, routine procedure, low visibility, slightly off, is what controllers describe when they talk about their real fears. To understand why, you need to go back to 1977, a foggy Sunday in the Canary Islands, an airport nobody planned to be at. March 27, 1977. Los Rodeos Airport, Tenerife. A bomb threat at the main island airport had diverted dozens of planes. The facility was overwhelmed. 2 Boeing 747s were on the only taxiway. One was KLM, captained by Jacob Van Zanten, KLM's own chief flight instructor. Van Zanten was arguably the most recognizable pilot in the Netherlands at the time. KLM had put his face in their own advertising. The other aircraft was Pan Am, also commanded by an experienced crew. Both were running out of patience. The fog was getting worse. What happened next was the result of 4 separate failures occurring simultaneously. Each one alone was recoverable. Together, they were not. Los Rodeos had no parallel taxiway. Both planes had to taxi the full length of the active runway just to get into position for takeoff. The KLM jet reached the far end, turned around, and waited. Pan Am was still somewhere on the runway, searching for its exit in the fog. What happened next came down to one radio transmission. The KLM co-pilot told the tower, "We are now at takeoff." The tower responded, "Okay, stand by for takeoff, I will call you." But Van Zanten had already begun the takeoff roll. At the same moment, Pan Am tried to break in on the same frequency. The 2 transmissions overlapped. Neither came through clearly. A 1-second squeal of radio interference. That was the gap. In the KLM cockpit, the runway ahead looked completely empty. The KLM 747 accelerated into the fog at full power. The Pan Am crew saw it coming and pushed their own throttles to maximum. The KLM jet was nearly airborne at impact. The collision happened at roughly 150 miles per hour. Both aircraft exploded immediately. 583 people died. Tenerife remains the deadliest accident in commercial aviation history, started on the ground, in fog, with 4 seconds of ambiguity. The aviation industry didn't just update a few procedures after Tenerife. It rewrote how humans communicate under pressure, from the ground up. "We are now at takeoff" was permanently removed from acceptable ATC vocabulary. Standardized phraseology became mandatory across every international aviation authority. Every runway clearance now requires a complete readback. Controllers confirm. Pilots confirm back. No shorthand, no assumed understanding. Crew resource management, training that teaches junior crew to challenge a senior captain's decision, was developed directly in response to Tenerife. On the KLM jet, the flight engineer had raised a concern. He didn't press it hard enough. CRM training now treats that hesitation as a systemic failure. Airports began installing surface detection radar, systems that track every aircraft and vehicle on the ground in real time, regardless of visibility. Today's ASD-X radar can detect a vehicle moving at walking speed in zero visibility fog and alert controllers automatically. It didn't exist in 1977. Runway status lights were added. Red lights embedded in the pavement that activate automatically when a runway is occupied, without any controller action required. The architecture of ground control became layered redundancy. Every clearance confirmed multiple times. The system rebuilt around a 4-second gap. And yet in January 2023, 5 separate runway near misses occurred at U.S. airports in a single month. The FAA opened a formal safety review. Investigators pointed to post-pandemic traffic recovering faster than staffing could absorb, combined with updated taxiway signage that confused even experienced crews. What came out of those testimonies was striking. Controllers named the runway, not weather or mechanics, as their highest pressure environment. One controller with 20 years on the job put it directly. In the air, I have time and tools. On the ground, the margin almost disappears. The geometry explains it. An aircraft at cruise altitude at 500 miles per hour is miles from the nearest plane. On the ground, during takeoff, 2 aircraft can be just 300 feet apart. At takeoff roll speed, about 180 miles per hour, 2 aircraft covering 300 feet together reach that intersection in approximately 1 second. That is the realistic window for a correction once an incursion is confirmed. 1 second. The math doesn't leave room for hesitation. Controllers manage it with layers simultaneously: surface radar, runway lighting, readback protocols, direct radio. It works. The safety record is genuinely extraordinary. But the people inside the system know exactly where the tension concentrates, not in open airspace, at the runway threshold, where the physics compress everything. In some ways, the fear isn't about catastrophic failure. It's about the quiet accumulation of small things, slightly rushed, slightly unclear, slightly off. Tenerife wasn't recklessness. Fog, an overloaded airport, one ambiguous phrase, 4 seconds of overlapping radio signals. The worst accident in aviation history. Austin 2023 wasn't incompetence. Pre-dawn darkness, standard procedures, one crew that skipped a visual check by about 30 seconds. The pattern is consistent across decades of runway incursion reports. Rarely one large mistake. Almost always a chain of small, ordinary deviations that compound. That's why controllers describe it the way they do. Not as panic, but as a constant low-frequency calculation that never completely switches off. Commercial aviation has a genuinely extraordinary safety record. By any statistical comparison, it's among the safest forms of transportation ever built. But the people who maintain that record know exactly where the hard edges are. They know the sky is vast. The runway is not. 60 seconds of controlled precision, twice per flight, every cleared takeoff, every landing, every taxi instruction, each carrying the full weight of what could go wrong. Every flight that lands safely is a quiet act of precision most passengers never notice. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. So next time you're waiting at the gate wondering why departure is delayed, there's a good chance a controller is double-checking the math. They're very good at it. That's everything for today. Safe travels wherever you're headed, and I'll see you in the next one.